Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel and another tutorial. Today we are going to do the Rosalie bag by Shamballa Designs. This was a highly requested tutorial, so I finally got around to doing it. This is an extraordinary bag. It is a large bag, as you can see. It features these beautiful connectors. It has these pockets here. They are lined. An interior zipper pocket. I'll show you the inside here. I just love the zipper tape. This is a new zipper tape from Blue Cala. But yes, this bag is just huge, 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 huge. What did I use to make this bag? Interfacing wise, on all my woven pieces, I have SF101 as my medium woven interfacing. I have Pellon sew-in flex foam for my main panels. I did put a piece of Decovil Heavy in the bottom in between the vinyl and the foam. I think I may forget to mention that in the video. So yes, I do have that in the bottom as well. It's not mandatory. Again, I do not know the name of this fabric. It's just something I picked up at my local fabric store. This was actually a border print fabric. So this was like the bottom of it. I think it was probably meant to be used as a quilt backing, but I really liked it. So I cut parts of the main part of the border on the bottom as my main panels, and then as my lining, you can see it's not as, this was like the top of the border fabric. So it actually works really good buying it that way for this bag, because it provided me with my lining fabric that wasn't the same as the exterior fabric. But again, I pick things up along the way and I just have no idea what it is. And of course, I already had cut off the selvages and I don't know. I just don't know. My vinyl is a Dakota Marine vinyl from Fabricville. This vinyl here is the metallic. It's one of the metallic colors from Emmeline Bags, the Rex Metallics. I do not remember what color that was. It's the green one. My hardware is all from Emmeline Bags except for the zipper and the zipper pull. That is from Blue Cala. Again, this zipper from Blue Cala is just amazing. It's one of her new rainbows. She's got a couple different kinds of rainbow zippers. So yeah, no, this was a fun bag to sew. In the pattern, it says it's an intermediate pattern. I think a boisterous beginner could probably do it. The hardest part was the top zipper. At least I found. I'm not one that likes to sew top zippers because they always end up a little bit wavy. I didn't do too bad this time. It actually looks not too bad. But yeah, that was the hardest part. The rest was pretty easy. It's just that top zipper. Yeah, what else to say about this? I want to thank Sammy for allowing me to do tutorials on her patterns. I will have a link below on where you can purchase this pattern. Again, it's called the Rosalie. And yeah. Well, without further ado, how about we get into the tutorial? So yeah, I'll see you guys on the other side. Enjoy! All right, so let's talk about what we need for this bag. So you are going to need rivets. You're going to need zipper or zipper tape. I use Zipper by the Yard. 4 metal connectors. These are diamond connectors from Emmeline Bags. 4 strap-ins, 2 zipper pulls. I'm just using number 5 zipper pulls for both my zippers, and a zipper end. Very minimal hardware you need for this bag. Okay, for pieces, you are going to need some flex foam. You can also use fleece if you wanted. You're going to need to cut 2 bottom pieces. I have my cotton pieces back with SF101. I also fused a piece of Decovil Heavy on the back within the seam allowances of the vinyl piece. You're going to need 2 side pocket exterior pieces. a zipper overlay piece, two contrast bands for the side slip pockets, okay, you are going to need two side pieces for the lower part of the exterior and two lining pieces in cotton for the side pockets. Two side piece tops. Two lengths for your straps. You are going to need four of the main panel pieces, so two for your front and two for your lining, or two for your exterior, two for your lining pieces. And these are all backed with SF101 because I am using cotton. Going to need two lining side pieces. Again, backed with woven interfacing. All my cotton pieces are backed with the SF101 interfacing. A zip pocket piece. And I'm actually going to take my handles and do those off camera. I have a link down below on how to do that. Okay, so I've done one side already to show you what we are going to do. So you're going to take your upper piece, your side upper piece, and your side lower piece. The lower piece can be done in cotton as well. I just thought it would be cool to do as a vinyl. Make sure the curved part is facing up. You're going to put them right sides together. So you are not clipping this together on that curved top piece of the side top. You want to make sure you're doing the straight piece. We're going to do that with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And then we're going to top stitch that at 1/8 of an inch, making sure that our seam is pointing down to the lower side. Just like so, it's pointing down. We're good to go with that. Okay, so I'm going to take all these pieces with the exterior main pieces, the bottom, and the sides, and I'm going to attach them to foam. And I have done that here. Now, one thing, I didn't cut these out of the seam allowance. You could always use a zigzag stitch if you wanted. I'm not using a fusible interfacing, so I had to put them for the whole length. But a zigzag stitch will help do that for you. So I have done one of the side panels, and I'm going to show you how we got there. So you're going to take your side piece and your side lining piece. And you're going to need your contrast band. And your rivets, and your rivet template. Okay, so first thing we want to do is we want to take our contrast band and we want to use the longer side. So you kind of know which one that is. The little angled areas that are shorter, we want those to be facing down. That's just like so. And that long edge we are going to put along the lining piece. So you can see on each end there's the angles. The longer angles are what we have towards the bottom where we are going to be stitching them together. And the shorter angled pieces will be facing up. Now we're going to stitch that with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, and you want to fold that up this way so the seam allowance is pointing down towards the lining, and then we are going to top stitch that to hold that into place. So none of the top stitching for this will be done on the contrast band. It's all on that main lining piece here. Okay, and then you're going to take your exterior piece and you are going to line that up along the unsewn edge of the contrast band. There'll be a little bit of an overhang. That's okay, as long as it is centered. I'm just lining up my center marks from when I drew my pieces. And then we are going to sew that with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And just like we did with the other side, we are going to flip it around, making sure that our seam is pointing towards that side, exterior side pocket piece, away from that contrast band, like so. And then we're going to top stitch that into place. Just like this. So now what we want to do is we want to fold this in half, wrong sides together, lining up our curved pieces. And we want to make sure that this contrast piece is very even on top. You want it to be, not be like more on one side and less on the other. You want it to be even. So I'm going to match up my centers on the curve part. Make some adjustments if my contrast strip there doesn't look even. Mine does not look too bad. My first one I had to make a few adjustments. Now you see I have some overhang here. That's just bad cutting on my part, and I'll trim that up here momentarily. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to top stitch with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance along the contrast, and then we're just going to baste the rest of it together so everything stays in place, all with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Just excuse me as I throw everything on the floor. You would not believe what my floor looks like by the end of a project. And I'm just going to trim up where I cut my lining pieces a little bit too wide. Again, that's just bad cutting on my part when I cut my pieces out. Just like so. Okay, now the optional decorative rivets. We're going to put them right along this accent strip here, and you're going to use this template that is included in the pattern. And what I've done is in the middle of each of those circles, I have cut a little hole, and that enables me to line it up, and then I can just take my erasable pen and I can just put little dots using those holes as guides for where I am going to punch my holes for my rivets. And then I'm just going to go along and make those dots a little bit darker and make sure they're nice and even. Looks pretty good to me. And then I'm just going to take my leather punch and I am going to punch out those holes. I'm just using the smallest setting on my leather punch here. Now, one thing I wish I had had was some small rivets. I only had the medium rivets in my iridescent, and I was worried that they were going to be a little bit too big, but they actually weren't. They worked okay, but I think going forward for this, because my fabric here isn't super thick and I can't back it with anything, I would use a small rivet. But the medium ones work. There's just a little bit of airspace in between it on the back, but they're just decorative, so it's all good. But yes, I would recommend using small rivets for this part. My posts were just a little bit long. Okay, and then I'm going to set those with my rivet press. Like so, and then I'm going to go ahead and do that with all of the other rivets along that line. And this is what she looks like. So now you want to take our side panel that we had attached to foam, and we are going to mark the bottoms of that slip pocket, just the bottom. I'm going to put a little snip where the center is. And then on my side panel, I'm going to find the center of the top and the bottom of my side panel. You can do this with the pen as well. Again, I just like to use the snips because the snips don't go away. Just make sure that they are within 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. You need them to be within the seam allowance. So you're going to match up that center mark and clip the bottom of our slip pocket and our side panel together. Okay, and you're going to notice that our slip pocket is slightly wider than our side panel, and that is what we want because we need it to be able to kind of fold and be a little bit billowy. I don't know if billowy is the right word, but it needs to be bigger. So now you're going to go up the sides, matching up that raw edge. You won't notice it so much with the first side. But when you go to do the second side, you're going to notice how it's going to pop up in the middle here. And that is exactly what we want. We want it to do that. Otherwise, it's going to be too tight once you put the rest of the bag together because this part is almost folded in half when the bag is assembled. And if that pocket doesn't have a little bit of give, it's just not going to do it properly and you won't have access to that pocket. So I'm going to go ahead and just baste this on here. Okay, so we've got both of those done. And now we're going to install our diamond connectors, and I'm also going to put on my nameplate. So to know where to put this, you're going to take the connector part on the pattern, and I like to just cut that line. Like so. So when I put it on my pattern piece, I can take it in my marking pen, and I can just mark using that slit and trace it through to the fabric. Just make sure everything's lined up nicely so you're putting your connector in the right place. Just like that. And flip the pattern piece over and do the other side. Making sure that fold line is in the middle so you know you're putting it in the right place. Just like so. And these are going to sit right at that line like this. So you're going to go ahead and install your connectors as per the manufacturer's instructions and put on your nameplate if you're going to do so, and do that on the other main panel as well. Okay, so that's all done. And I just wanted to show you that I did back it with a scrap of Decovil Heavy on all 4 connectors, and then I'm just putting a piece of Gorilla Tape over top of that just to protect the lining fabric once it's together from rubbing against those prongs. Because I'm using cotton, I would definitely use the heavy interfacing. You could use Peltex as well. Okay, so now we are going to do our exterior. So we want to take our bottom piece and we want to mark the centers of the short sides and the centers of the long sides. So again, I just use little snips. Okay, and then we're going to take one of our exterior panels and we are going to match up our center snips. Again, you can see I had a little bit of bad cutting here. I will clean that up. But all will be well. Okay, so I'm going to take this to the machine and do a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, fold it back so the seam allowance is going towards the base, and top stitch that at a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And this is what we got. So you can see it's going the right way towards the bottom. And then we are going to take the other exterior piece and do the exact same thing on the other long edge of the base piece. Okay, so now this is what we got. So now we need to put on our side pieces. So we had already cut our center marks, so we want to match up those center marks, the center bottom of the side and the short side of our bottom piece. Put 3 or 4 clips in there just to hold that in place. And then take the top of the main panel and the top of the side piece and clip that. And then work your way down, evenly distributing that fabric all the way down around the curve. Around the curves, you may want to use quite a few clips. It gets a little bit tricky when it comes to sewing around the curves. And do the same with the opposite side, matching up the tops of the exterior main and the top of the side panel. Again, making sure that you're evenly distributing that fabric around that curve. Again, I am no stranger to clips, especially when it has to do with curves. You want this to stay in place. Okay, so we're going to take this to the machine and we're going to go all the way around there with the 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I'm doing this with the side panel up and the main panel on the bed of the machine. I apologize, this is really hard to show because this bag is so big that it kind of gets in the way of the camera. But as you come around the corner, you're going to kind of turn your bag with it. So it's going to kind of stand up a little bit just around that corner. As you guide it around, make sure you're feeling for puckers or anything slipping. Just take it very slow going clip by clip to get that curve nice. This is what's going to give the bag the shape that we want to achieve. When you get along the bottom, you can kind of put it down flat because you're going for a straight stretch until you get to that opposite curved corner. Making sure you're not sewing in anything you shouldn't be sewing in there. I kind of like to put my hand inside the bag so I kind of feel where it's going. And then when you get to that corner, kind of stand it up and work its way around that corner as I'm doing here. And then you can breathe easy when you get to the straight edge again. Okay, and I'm just going to flip it out just to make sure we caught everything and make sure that my curves look good. Make sure I don't have to re-sew anything. But it looks pretty good, I think. So then put it back inside out, and then you're going to go ahead with the other side panel, and you are going to do the exact same thing with the other side. Okay, so here we have it. So now all we're going to do is to trim our seam allowances. We're just going to do the corners. I'm going to use my pinking shears. You could also just use small clips. And this is just so we get a nice curve when we turn it out. So just the 4 curved corners you're going to do this with. And my pinking shears are very dull. I need a new pair. It's really not as hard as it looks to cut through this. All right. And then you can turn it right side out and your exterior is done. If you like, you can match up your seams and your centers just to give you an idea of how the bag is looking and to see if you've got your shape correct. Go, it's looking pretty good to me. So I notice here, and it does say that you can do this in the pattern as well. My sides are a little bit higher than my main panel. So I'm just going to take a ruler and I'm going to even that up. And then do the same with the other side as well. Make sure your back panel and your front panel are exactly flush with each other when you're doing this. I'm cutting through all layers, the front and the back. And she looks good. Okay, so I went ahead with my lining pieces and I installed my zipper pocket for easy turning. I am not doing that in this tutorial. I do have that class link down in the description. So now what you're going to do is you are going to assemble the lining pieces exactly like we just did with the exterior pieces, with a few things different. So on the bottom of our bottom piece here, we are going to leave an opening. Oh, I guess this is probably about 6 inches or so. I just eyeball it for turning. So we do not want to sew in between that area where I just marked. We are also, as we sew down, we're going to start at the top at a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, work all the way around with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then work our way back up to a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And that's going to make it so our lining is not baggy inside the bag. So go ahead and do that just like we did with the other, with those few exceptions, and then we'll come back. Okay, so you can see I started 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And right about here, I started branching out to a 1/2 inch all the way around and then back up to a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So our opening at the top will be the same size as our exterior, but the rest of it is going to be just a little bit smaller. So I have the opening in the bottom of the bag, and then my way of doing the interior pocket for turning, the opening in the bottom of the pocket. So now we are going to work on our top zipper. So I'm just going to use this to guesstimate how much I need to cut off my zipper by the yard. Okay, and what I'm going to do on the back side of my zipper by the yard, I am going to take my pen and on the wrong side of it mark in up about 1 inch straight across. And what this is going to do is going to help us get our zipper pull on nice and straight. You can do this with the zipper pull already installed. I just find this is a new way of doing it that just makes things so much easier. So you have that even line and that'll come into play later on. So now what we want to do is we want to turn the other end of our zipper tape in at a 90-degree angle. So the way I do that is you kind of pinch it and fold it upon itself like this. And then put a clip there to hold it. Just like that. And we're going to end up tacking it down at the sewing machine right there. And you want to make sure the other side is as even as you possibly can be with the other one. This is kind of like making a stop so our zipper pull does not fly off the other end once it's on the bag. So take your time to make that fold nice so they're nice and even. There you go. And then we will also go and tack that one at the machine. So I'm going to go do that now. So here we go. I have it all tacked in. They look nice and even. And now you can pull the zipper tape apart. So now you're going to take your exterior shell. You're going to match up your seams so it's lying evenly. And from that center right there, we're going to mark in about 1 inch. And I'm actually going to make some snips with my scissors just because my chalk never stays. And this is where we're going to be starting and stopping our zipper tape. So again, the little snips, about 1/8 of an inch, and they're just because they don't go away and I'll be able to see them if my chalk washes away on both sides. And do the same for the opposite side, for the front and back. Here's your 1 inch and make your snips or draw your lines through the back panel and the front panel. You can see how it's our side piece that's folded in half now, and it acts as both the front and the back of the bag. Okay, so you can remove those clips now. Decide which is your front of the bag, which I have my tag on, and I like my bags to open from left to right. So we want that 90-degree angle to be on the left-hand side, and we are going to put it wrong sides together, the zipper wrong sides together, or sorry, right sides together with our main panel. So our zipper is a wrong side up right now. And we are going to clip that across. Do your best not to stretch the zipper tape, because we're going to try our best to avoid a wavy zipper, which usually happens for me when I do top zipper closures. This is the hardest part of the bag right here. When you get to where the seams are, try to open up those seams. That'll help reduce the bulk. And when you get to the other side where that 1 inch snip is, you want to veer the zipper tape down before it reaches that. And that's so our tail of our zipper tape does not get caught in the seam allowance, so we'll be able to put on our zipper pull and our zipper end. Just like so. So it's kind of veered down. And you're going to sew across here with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And you are going to do the zipper tape the exact same way on the other side. So make sure that your start of your zipper tape is starting exactly like with the other one. So the 90-degree angles are on the same side of the bag. And right side together with the exterior fabric, clip your zipper tape to the exterior of the bag, opening up your seams. Again, being careful not to stretch your zipper tape. But make sure it's nice and taut with the bag as well, because you don't want it to be too loose, you don't want it to be too tight. Okay, and again, when you come to the other side, you want to make sure you're veering your tail down before we hit that 1 inch mark, evenly with the other side, because you want them to be symmetrical with one another. Just like so. And then you're going to take this to the machine, put on your zipper foot, and you are going to sew that tape on with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Again, it's really hard to show at the machine because this bag is so large, but what I'm doing is pretty much how you do when you do top stitching. Having a cylinder arm or a free arm on your machine would make this so much easier, but unfortunately my industrial does not have that, and I do not have a cylinder arm. So take your time to make sure your 1/4 inch is nice and even, because the more even, or the evener we have that on there, the less wavy that zipper tape is going to be. So take your time with this. And then make sure when you get to the end that you are veering that zipper tail down so it's not going to be caught in that seam allowance. So here we go. So you can see this is where our 90-degree angle started. They're on the same side. Our tails are veering down. And you want to make sure that your tape is pretty even along here. So I'm just kind of folding it up to see. So what I want to do is I'm just going to actually install my zipper pull just to make sure I don't have to go and restitch and everything. So this is my handy dandy fly tie holding whatever fork thing that my husband made me for putting on zipper pulls. It's my handy dandy homemade zipper jig. It's amazing. So this is where the lines on the back of the zipper tape are going to come in handy. So you're going to turn your zipper tape so the teeth are facing each other. Flip it over to the wrong side, and where we have those lines, when we put them onto the jig, we want to make sure that those lines are lining up. If they don't line up, then our zipper tape is not straight. But this is just easier than zipping and unzipping and zipping and unzipping, so you can actually see that you're going good. So let's give her a go. And you know what? I got it first try. Woohoo! And then I'm just going to zip it up and then see if I'm satisfied with how my zipper is looking. If it seemed too wavy or what have you, I would go back and just either redo it or fix those areas that may have been higher than others. But I'm actually okay with what we have here. It's pretty straight. A little bit of wave, but I'm probably the only one that's going to notice it. So again, I took my zipper pull off and I've put it aside for now. And now we are going to put the lining and the exterior together. We are so almost done. So again, I like to position my zipper pocket at the back of the bag, and I'm going to put my exterior into my lining, right sides together. Again, it's going to be a little bit tight because remember our lining is slightly smaller than our exterior, but our top opening will be a perfect match if we have done things properly. So what I like to do is I like to match up my sides first. So those center side pieces are snips that we had cut on our pieces. And then match up our side seams with the exterior side seams. Make sure they're nice and even. Making sure in between those areas the fabric is distributed nice and evenly. which it should be if we've cut things properly and we haven't done our seam allowances too bad. Okay, and go ahead and do that with the other side. Making sure that your tails are down and not going to be caught in that seam allowance. You need them to be free. All right, and go ahead and do that with the rest of the bag. Okay, so that is done. So now what we're going to do is, I'm not going to take it to the machine to show you, but I am going to put it on the bed of my machine like this, and I am going to follow that 1/4 inch line that we originally sewed our zipper on with. And just because we know our zipper is already straight, we know that we'll make sure it is. So I have gone and done that, and I'm just making sure that it is all nice and even, that everything was caught. I'm going to trim my 90-degree zipper ends here down just to about 1/4 of an inch, still leaving some overhanging. And if it looks good, then you can start pulling it right side out through the bottom hole of the bag. This bag turns very easy, which is always nice. Okay, so just double check along the zipper that it was all caught and there's no holes. Stuff the lining into the bag and roll the seam with your fingers and finger press them so the lining fabric is away from the zipper. And I usually use a couple clips all the way around just to kind of hold that in place to make sure that the lining isn't sneaking up into where we will be top stitching. So go ahead and do that, and then you're going to top stitch around here, making sure the lining is pulled down with the 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So that's it. We have top stitched it all. She looks lovely. Okay, now to finish up the bottom of the bag to seal that hole. This is the way I like to do it and why we leave a hole in the bottom of our zipper pocket. So you're going to pull your zipper pocket out, reach in that opening, and you're going to grab that opening in the bottom of the bag, and you are going to pull it up and through the opening at the bottom of the zipper pocket. And what this is doing is making it so we don't have that ridge at the bottom of the bag from top stitching the hole shut. This way it is completely seamless. So I just use a couple clips to close up that hole. And then you're going to start where we started and stopped our stitching when we were putting the lining together to seal up that hole. Making sure to back stitch well. And then you're going to stuff the lining back in through that zipper pocket opening. And then you're going to top stitch the zipper pocket closed. And of course we have that nice folded edge. And yeah, that leaves this little seam that we're trying to avoid. But do you know what? It's on the inside of the zipper pocket and nobody is ever going to see it. I just find it's much better to be there than to be at the bottom of the bag. So this is how I seal up all my turned bags. And the sewing part is complete. Just have to stuff that zipper back into the bag. And a seamless finish on the interior. Okay, so after we finished closing up that pocket, the only things left to do, I did them off camera, was I trimmed up I put my zipper pull on just like we did when we were testing it before the lining, matching up those little white lines so we knew it was going on nice and even. I trimmed up my zipper and put on my zipper end, and I riveted my handles on to the connectors, and she is done. So I really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope it was helpful. Rosalie has been being requested for a good month or so, so I finally got around to doing it. I do have a couple more Shamballa tutorials coming up as we go. Eventually I'll get through the whole catalog. I just need a little bit more time to do that. So yes, if you found this tutorial helpful, please do me a solid and subscribe if you haven't already. Give me a thumbs up. Put a comment down in the comments. Let me know what you think. And I will catch you guys on the next one. Bye.